When my husband saw the man in the purple suit, he spit his pastrami sandwich all over my fake Chanel purse.
That guy's supposed to be dead,
he coughed. My son, who was too young to understand that my husband choking to death would be the best thing that could happen to our family, patted his father's back with a fat little hand. Here's the thing about gangsters. They've got loose lips. All that tough guy omerta stuff died out with the ones who came over from Italy. I mean, that's practically how I met my husband Ralph. He swaggered over to the creep beside me at the bar and whispered into his ear, "Fuck off, I'm connected." At the time, I thought it was hot. But now that my husband and his ego have both doubled in size, it's just a question of what will get him first. A heart attack or a RICO indictment. What guy? I asked, as if it could be anyone other than the purple-suited Haitian man with face tattoos and golden jewelry staring at us from across the food court. His teeth glittered when he smiled at us. He's coming over here. Ralph cracked his knuckles and neck like he always did when he was nervous. Before I could slip away to the bathroom, the purple-suited man had boxed us into the table.
"Andre,"
my husband hissed.
"I thought I killed you. Didn't you?"
Andre's voice sure sounded dead. Pure monotone. Come to think of it, his face looked pretty cadaverous as well. Although that might have been the case before my husband stabbed him 5 times in the chest with an ice pick. Ice is also what I thought of when Andre grabbed my wrist with a frigid hand and brought it to his jugular. There was no pulse. Nothing.
"Why don't you ask your wife what she thinks?"
"I think he's dead, babe," I whispered, hoping that would make Andre let me go. His gold ring was even colder than his skin, and it cut into my fingers. The man I thought I married would have pistol-whipped Andre right there in the middle of the food court for touching his wife. Cops or no cops. But Ralph just kept sweating and eyeballing mall security.
"Hey, man,"
Ralph shrugged.
"Leave the family out of this. It's between me and you. Men's business. No need to make it personal."
My husband, who has less emotional intelligence than a rectal thermometer, seemed not to realize that he'd already made it pretty personal when he'd killed the guy. "Daddy?" Ralphie Jr. looked ready to wet his pants when Andre's pale eyes drifted over to him. Like father, like son. At least the security people were on their way over. Married to a mafioso, and I was about to be saved by a mall cop. Story of my life. At least he was kind of cute. Andre leaned forward so that his unbuttoned shirt fell open, treating us all to a front row view of 5 putrid black holes in his chest.
"I don't need to sleep, Ralph. I don't need to eat or drink or even shit. Do you believe that? All I have to do,"
Andre grinned,
"is make your life a living hell until I decide to take it away."
With that, Andre let me go. He put his hands above his head for mall security as he passed, don't shoot style, and laughed a hollow laugh. The laugh of the dead. Then he was gone.
"This can't be happening,"
Ralph started repeating as soon as we got into the SUV.
"Andre was a nobody. A pimp, an addict. A small-time dealer tried to cut in on the wrong hustle. They poured a concrete slab over top of where we buried him, for Christ's sake. The very next day."
If the cops had the car bugged, I could forget about our upcoming trip to Cancun. On the drive home, Ralph's face went from irritated purple to terrified pale, as he called the guys one by one. They each failed to pick up. They'd probably already gotten their little visit from Andre the walking corpse and decided to skip town. So much for blood brotherhood. "Why save you for last?" I asked.
"'Cause it was my idea,"
Ralph admitted.
"He was selling on my turf. If we didn't set an example..."
I turned the radio up until I couldn't hear my husband's excuses, and kept it that way until we parked in the driveway. I wasn't trying to become an accessory to murder. If Andre's goal was to suck all the joy out of our lives, it worked. We spent every waking moment waiting for him to show up. Ralph, too, although he'd never admit it. He sat in front of the TV with a pistol in one hand and a cold brew in the other, and jumped at every little sound. I was the one who had to clean the plates from his stress eating, and that was how I came face to face with Andre for the second time. I don't know how long his face was pressed against the glass, staring at me, but when I looked up, those sunken eyes were inches away from mine. I screamed. I think I actually threw the dish rag at the window. but Andre didn't budge. Of course, by the time I got Ralph up and moving, he'd disappeared once again. Ralph didn't believe that I'd actually seen him. A woman's overactive imagination, he called it. He said the same thing about the creaking noises we heard on the roof that night. I called them footsteps. He called them the house settling. He found the smoke and flames coming from the burning ceiling a few hours later a little harder to explain away, however. "So, how about it, babe?" I snarled at him as I pulled on my pink fluffy bathrobe and dragged Ralphie Jr. out of our burning home. Did my overactive imagination set the house on fire too? The fireman who called our hotel room later said that someone had poured gasoline all over our roof. I didn't have to ask who the second call was from. The one that came around 3 a.m. the same night.
"I'm gonna take everything from you."
Andre's rasping voice boomed from the phone speaker until it seemed to fill the room.
"Piece by piece. Same as you did to me."
Ralph had to go meet with the insurance people alone. There had been some nasty insinuations about fraud, and yet our lawyer was suddenly nowhere to be found. In the meantime, I took Ralphie Jr. to the dingy 90s-style arcade and the hotel pool. It's funny. All his expensive toys were burned to a crisp, yet there he was, having the time of his life. I actually started to think this might all work out in the end. After all I'd been through, I was still kicking, with diamonds in my earrings and a hotel bar mojito in my hand, no less. Ralph was back from the meeting, too, laying in the deck chair beside me like a sunburned, snoring whale. And Ralphie Jr.? Where was Ralphie Jr.? The last I'd seen of him, he was doing a cannonball into the deep end. The mojito hit me hard when I stood up, and harder still when I saw the unbreathing man holding my son against the bottom of the pool. Andre looked up at me and grinned. Then he let Ralphie Jr. go. For once, I was grateful for my son's extra ballast. He came up right away, sputtering and screaming. Andre strolled out from the depths of the pool. He walked over to Ralph, and in a move that was surprisingly deft for a corpse, he pulled my husband's swim trunks down and knotted them around his ankles.
"Huh?"
Ralph snorted awake.
"Huh?"
He saw Andre, tried to stand, and face-planted. Andre walked out of the hotel with my husband in hot pursuit. The desk clerk didn't even look up from his phone. It was the kind of place where a dripping guy in a purple suit being chased through the lobby by an obese, naked Italian man wasn't such an unusual occurrence. I stayed with Ralphie Jr., trying to get the water out of his lungs, which probably hadn't gotten a workout like this since the last time he'd been chasing the ice cream truck. I got to my feet quick, though, when I heard a familiar engine rumble to life. The dead guy was stealing my SUV. Since the car and my husband were both lost causes, I went up to the room where my worst fears were confirmed. While we'd been getting tan, Andre had cleaned us out. Like most in his line of work, my husband kept his money in hard cash and jewelry, but the keys to our safe and deposit box were gone too. I suddenly wondered how much was left on our only remaining credit card, after all the mojitos. There was a putrid smell coming from the bathroom. All of our clothes were in the tub, soaking in a blue-brown gunk that I recognized as the guts of a porta-potty. Andre must have hauled it up by the bucketful. I had to hand it to the guy. He didn't skimp when it came to revenge. That was what finally broke Ralph, realizing that it was all gone. The house, the money, his friends, even his clothes. He wasn't connected anymore. He was a helpless nobody, just like Andre had been. Maybe that was the point. I don't think any of us were surprised when the knock on the hotel room door came at midnight, or when Ralph shuffled over to answer it without even trying to defend himself. I don't know what happened to Ralph after he left with Andre that night. I don't want to know. All I know is that I never saw my husband again. But hey, I can't complain. At least Andre didn't fuck around with the life insurance policy. So, if you can see ghosts, I asked the woman shellacking my nails, why are you doing this for a living? You try, lady. Put out an ad, see what you get. Susan, my manicurist, snorted. I tried, and I got 3 calls. A family of 7 who tried to baptize me, a schizo who tried to stab me with a needle, and the guy in the hotel room. Well, What he had under his bathrobe might have been pretty much invisible, but that didn't make it a ghost. See you in 3 weeks? I asked when she'd finished. Don't think so. Susan wrinkled her nose. No offense, but you've got the stink of death about you. She hesitated. Either that or Tiffany microwaved fish for lunch again. I thought things would get better after a dead guy made my mobster husband disappear, and I moved to the Midwest with my son Ralphie Jr. I can't specify the place, but it's a town with a dying mall where unhappily married couples go to sip half-price cocktails at Applebee's. And the hottest action on a Saturday night is cruising the Walmart parking lot with the radio blaring and the windows down. If you think that narrows it down, well, good luck. Right, Ralphie Jr. He's had some, trouble adjusting to school. And it's no wonder. You drop one F-bomb around here and people act like you just took a shit in their Wonder Bread and mayonnaise sandwich or something. I mean, the closest thing to an international community is one guy. From Paris. Paris, Kentucky. But what was I saying? Right, Ralphie Jr. The school. Now, Ralphie Jr. getting picked on is nothing new. You know, kids can be so cruel, so petty, so prejudiced. And believe me, my little Ralphie deserves every bit of it. The last time I got called in for a parent-teacher conference because a kid was picking on Ralphie, it turned out that the kid hit Ralphie Jr. because my sweet little boy took his sandwich at lunch. Every day. For a year. I would have hit him too. What worries me is that Ralphie has made a friend. Ryan. Ralphie Jr. won't shut up about him. Ryan is amazing at hide and seek. It's like he disappears. You should have seen how high Ryan jumped at recess today. Nobody picks on me when I hang out with Ryan. The way Ralphie Jr. was talking, I was imagining this Ryan kid to be, I don't know, some kind of miniature Hulk. Picking Ralphie Jr. up from school a few days ago, I got a glimpse of him. Ryan looked as thin and weak as gas station coffee. One of those smudge-faced, puffy-eyed, pale kids who sits in the back and never says anything. He was carrying a scuffed-up teddy bear beneath one arm. Okay, so that was weird. But not as weird as our conversation in the car. The substitute fell and broke her ankle today, Ralphie Jr. explained cheerily, as though nothing could have pleased him more. She shouldn't have told Ryan to put his teddy bear away. I guess she didn't know. Didn't know what? I wondered. But I kept my mouth shut, because I knew that Ralphie Jr., just like his dearly departed father, would spill all those secrets he was trying so hard to keep if I just stayed quiet and let him do it. I was thinking, Ralphie Jr. began, in that same trying to be nonchalant tone my dead husband used to put on, just before asking me if he could use my credit card to put a down payment on a boat or some other sketchy thing. Do you think I could go over to Ryan's house sometime? Like, today, maybe? The apple didn't fall from the shit-for-brains tree, it seemed. I groaned and asked for the address. The truth was I wanted to meet this Ryan kid's parents, partially to see if they were psychos, and partially to see if that bland little boy happened to have a hot, rich, single dad. If our kids already got along, that was a start, right? I was still daydreaming about this Midwestern surfer millionaire dad when we pulled into Ryan's driveway. Early 2000s brick ranch house. No lights in the windows. The yard was a little small, but I cared more about the master bedroom closet space anyway. Walking up the driveway, holding Ralphie Jr.'s hand, I wondered if Ryan's dad and I would like the same wines. We rang the bell. Twice. No answer. I guess your friend isn't home, I sighed. And his dad isn't either. But as I loosened my grip on Ralphie Jr.'s hand and turned to check on the car, something happened that chilled my blood. The door of the house flew open, and Ralphie Jr.'s fingers slipped through mine. By the time I spun back around, it was like the house had swallowed him up. Hey! I pounded on the locked door. Hey! Raphael Palumbo Jr., you open this door right now, mister. Ryan? You in there? Anybody? Hey! Mother's instincts, I guess. But the thought of what might be happening to my son inside that dark, silent house was driving me crazy. I bruised my shoulder, slamming all of my 125 pounds against the door again and again. Maybe only a few minutes had passed, but it felt like hours. I looked around for something to smash a window with. Mommy? Ralphie Jr. asked when I turned around again. Why are you holding a tree stump? It was a long ride home. Apparently, Ralphie Jr. informed me, Ryan couldn't play after all, but at least he'd given Ralphie Jr. what he came for. That's when I noticed it. The teddy bear. A gray, one-eyed thing with a perpetual frown stitched onto its muzzle, like a sick love child of Eeyore and Winnie the Pooh. I wondered if it had bedbugs. Oh, that's nice. I was at a loss for words. So nice. I'm sure Ryan misses it a lot. We better take it back, hon. We can't, Ralphie explained in a flat, terrified tone I'd never heard him use before. Not even when he was looking at an actual dead guy. Ryan says I have to take Chip for a little while, and I don't want to make Ryan mad. Chip. At first the name made me roll my eyes, but then it made me wonder. There was a bit of bead missing from the top of Chip's single eye, giving the gray bear a perpetually hateful, downturned look. My son was staring into that broken eye like it was a peephole to the darkness beyond the stars, or something like that. He took the bear to his room the moment we got home. I probably should have followed him, but dinner wasn't made and the dirty clothes were stacked high enough to be an OSHA violation. What can I say? When you got nothing to wear to work tomorrow, the laundry takes priority over diabolical stuffed animals. Ralphie Jr.'s room was dark, the door half open when I finally checked on him upstairs. Honey? I shouted. I cut the crust off your pepperoni sandwiches. Something dribbled on my cheek. I looked up. Ralphie Jr. was dragging himself along the ceiling with his head turned around almost backwards. The teddy bear was clenched in his drooling jaws. I was too terrified to move, but when I opened my mouth, it was my mother voice that came out instead of a scream. Raphael Palumbo Jr., you come down here this instant! My son did as he was told, but not in the way I'd imagined. I knew Ralphie Jr. was overweight, but I didn't fully understand how bad it had gotten until he dropped on my head. While Ralphie Jr. gurgled in the language of hell and tried to pull out my eyeballs, I tugged at the teddy bear between his teeth. It was clearly the cause of all this. What had made Ryan jump high and hide so well. When it finally came free, Ralphie Jr. collapsed in an exhausted heap. You're going in the blender, you little shit! I screamed at the bear in a cocktail of rage and fear. It didn't like that at all. Something rippled like flexing muscles beneath the cloth, and the stuffed arm I was holding got hot. Hot enough to burn. I yelped and dropped the flaming teddy bear, which crawled around, setting fire to my landlady's carpet. I wondered if this would be covered under my right to bear firearms. I grabbed one of my dead husband's golf clubs and gave chase, but that tiny bastard was fast for his size. A hateful blue glow full of evil intelligence radiated from Chip's single eye, and with a wave of its paw, a dresser flew across the room and nearly smashed my head like a melon. Next thing I knew, I was swinging the golf club like a maniac, playing baseball with my IKEA furniture. I rolled Ralphie Jr. out of the way, ducked beneath a flying desk lamp, and gave that little fucker a hole-in-one straight to the jaw. 4! I yelled as the possessed bear flew backwards into the hall closet. I jammed what was left of my coffee table under the closet door, which had started to vibrate with telekinetic force. A blue glow coming from inside. Ralphie Jr. was unconscious, but at least he was breathing. I had no idea what to do. So I looked at my phone, and I thought of Andre. My dead mobster husband Ralph had kept all of his drug dealer contacts and code in a little black book, which I'd held onto for some reason. Andre had been a part of that world. Was it possible that his number might be inside? I wasn't worried about the code. Ralph had thought it was clever, but I'd cracked it halfway through an episode of Desperate Housewives years ago. That was how I'd been able to send the sympathy cards to all of his mistresses. It took some finding, and the pounding and smoke from upstairs were really annoying. But before long, I was dialing, and someone picked up. I kept waiting to hear breathing on the other end of the line, but then I remembered that Andre didn't breathe. Andre? I asked, trying to sound sweet. Do you remember me? There was no reply but the sound of my heartbeat. And then,
Yeah?
I wondered what I should say. Something like, wow, you sound great. It's like you've barely brought it at all. I decided the truth was the way to go. I've got this possessed stuffed animal. Do you know anybody who might be interested in something like that? A very long pause.
Where is the trapped one?
The violent, raspy shift in Andre's voice almost made me drop the phone. My house?
Get out. Then send me the address.
But We just moved here, I whined.
The buyer will compensate you.
Andre named a figure, and I decided I didn't like living in a giant cornfield that much after all. What else can I say? It looks like Ralphie Jr. and I are on the road again. If Las Vegas is America's playground, the rest of Nevada is America's kitty litter box. And out here, the weirdest turds don't stay buried for long. Elvis was already dead when I ran him over. I am absolutely convinced of that, whatever Ralphie Jr. says. Even with my shades on, the blazing sun reflecting off the desert made my eyes hurt, and I thought the white tasseled lump in the road was just another mirage. Until my tires bumped over a beer gut and Elvis burst like a ripe strawberry on the deserted highway. Of course, we stopped right away. I snatched Ralphie Jr.'s phone out of his hand before he could upload the gruesome scene to TikTok, then moved to inspect the damage. I was pretty sure I could smell my shoes melting into the pavement. At first I was relieved when I saw that the middle-aged Elvis impersonator had been a corpse for a while, but then I started to think about how he must have died. A gory rope of intestines led off into the desert behind the guy. Who knew how long he'd been crawling around, trying to hold his guts in? Or had coyotes got to him? Coyotes. Ralphie, honey, I began. Get back in the car. By the time I turned around, it was too late. There were 4 of them between us and the SUV. Grayish-brown, dog-like with bushy tails. Their sunken yellow eyes were hungry. I could see their ribs through patchy fur. So why were 2 of them chewing on the tires instead of us? I didn't want to think about the possibility that they were disabling the SUV on purpose. The other 2 coyotes approached, stopped about 10 feet away, and then just stared at us, waiting. Parched, cracked dirt in every direction. Sulfur-colored cliffs on the horizon. The shoe-melting strip of road. There was absolutely nowhere to run or hide. When the tires finally deflated, all 4 coyotes began to circle us. I wondered how much it would hurt to climb a cactus. A blood-chilling howl stopped them in their tracks. They snapped their heads towards the source of the sound, which stood beside a dirt-shaped rock in the hazy distance. It looked like another coyote, but that was impossible, because coyotes don't walk on 2 legs. Whatever it was, it yipped and snarled a warning at the 4 starving beasts in front of me in a language they apparently understood. Looking down the road, I understood why. A gigantic semi-truck was speeding toward us. Ralphie Jr. and I both ran toward it, waving our arms like shipwreck survivors. The driver accelerated, then slowed, then accelerated again, almost like he was afraid to stop. Either that, or no one had taught him how to shift. When the 18-wheeler skidded to a halt beside us in a cloud of dust, a weather-beaten guy with a Sam Elliott mustache stuck a shotgun out the window.
Democrat or Republican?
He demanded. What the fuck does that have to do with anything? I snapped. I just want to ride. Sam Elliott mustache man thought this over for a minute.
Okay, I guess you folks are human after all. Come on up.
Do you always ask helpless stranded women about their politics? I asked crossly once Ralphie Jr. and I had settled into the truck's cab. Or am I a special case?
Nah,
the driver sighed.
I had to make sure you could talk, and that was the first thing that popped into my head. This here's a bad stretch of road. There's some unnatural things out here. But they can't talk. I was just making sure you wasn't one of them. The other guys would probably say I'm a fool for stopping at all. I'm Ted, by the way. Ted Yellowhorse.
The interior of the cab smelled like nicotine, Royal Pine car freshener, and melted gummy worms. But it was better than being out there.
Yep, this is a bad stretch of road, all right. Even before folks started disappearing a couple months ago. My people call this place the Salted Earth, because nothing can survive out here. Unless maybe it was already dead to begin with.
As Ted rambled, we passed a dusty, abandoned Cadillac with shredded tires and the doors hanging open. I figured that had been Elvis's ride. Poor guy. I wondered what made his tires go flat.
Oh shit!
Ted slammed on the brakes and clutched the wheel as we rolled over something spiky and hard. The truck jackknifed, rolled over, and I felt my son's pudge slam into the side of my head for the second time in a week. After the dust settled, and after I'd wiped Ted's cigarette ashes out of my hair, and shoved his fallen porno mags off my lap, I realized the predicament we were in. The truck was laying on its side, and I doubted it was going to cheerfully right itself anytime soon. Ted groaned, blood trickling down his scalp. Outside, about 100 coyotes howled in victory. Ted didn't wake, not even when Ralphie stepped on his face in his hurry to escape. The ice and the spilled 44-ounce drink on my door, now on the floor, brought back memories of high school friends comforting me while I puked into the toilet. They rubbed something cold on the back of my neck to snap me out of it. "Listen, asshole," I whispered to Ted as I splashed ice on his neck. "You're not going to bail on us like a minor character in a shitty horror story. Not today. My son and I have been through enough already. And last time I shot a shotgun, the recoil gave me a black eye. Get it together." Ted groaned and opened his eyes. I freed him from his seatbelt and we climbed out into the late afternoon sun. Broken down vehicles were all around us. It was almost like being back in New Jersey. One sedan had a coyote-sized hole in its windshield, the inside splattered with what was left of the passengers. A pickup truck had lost control and slammed into a rock. The half-eaten driver hung out the window. "Great."
"This is a bad stretch of road,"
Ted repeated helpfully. In one hand, he held a bloody cloth to his head. In the other, a shotgun. We gave the cliffs a 1,000-yard stare.
"There's a cave up there. We need to make it there before sunset."
"What?" I huffed. "That's like 5 miles.
"No, 8. Or you could wait for the coyotes."
Slogging across the parched dirt with a waterfall of sweat pouring down my back, and flies that felt as big as buzzards biting at my neck, I made a silent promise that if I survived this, I'd remove "love hikes" from my Tinder bio. Mother Nature is the biggest bitch of them all, I thought, as I rolled my ankle and cringed. "How do you know there's a cave up there, Mr. Ted?" Ralphie Jr. panted.
"Some of your ancestors massacred some of my ancestors up there. Do you know what a massacre is, kid?"
"It's like," Ralphie Jr. murmured, "like what the coyotes did?"
"That's right,"
Ted glared.
"Just like the coyotes."
The sun was as fat and orange as a pumpkin by the time we reached the bottom of the cliffs. There, at least, was something like a trail, even if it was practically vertical. Ralphie Jr. was treating the whole thing like a Boy Scout trip. Ted was surprisingly agile for a man who sits in a truck 14 hours a day. And as for me, I just tried not to look down. The mouth of the cave was in sight before Ted was willing to stop. It was at the top of a hollowed-out dent in the cliff, like a big ice cream spoon had scooped out the yellowed rock around us.
"You two wait here,"
Ted grunted. He was gone for a long time. I shivered as I looked out over the dead land, the strand of wrecked cars, and the dark shapes darting among the rocks and cacti below. One in particular made me grab Ralphie Jr.'s hand and lay as flat as I could against the still warm stone. It was 3 times the size of the other coyotes, and was walking straight toward us, as casual as a businessman on his way to an early lunch. When it looked at the hollow where we were hiding, its eyes were like 2 pinpricks of blazing white light, and I knew that it knew. "I'm coming," those eyes seemed to say, "and there's nowhere to run." Ted?" I shouted over my shoulder. "How's it going up there?"
"Good, but you two need to stay there."
"Why?" I was confused.
"As bait,"
Ted shouted back. "Now wait just a minute."
"Look, lady, do you want to kill that thing and get out of here or not?"
"Oh, hell no." Bang. I threw myself and Ralphie Jr. to the ground, as the loudest noise I'd ever heard blasted out of the scooped-out canyon. A coyote that had been about to ambush us lay dead in the brush. Ted, it seemed, knew what he was doing. Bang. A yelp. 2 more coyotes down. But there stood the largest one, approaching us with its unnatural strides, babbling in that yipping, snarling language to the pack that followed it. There was no way Ted had enough ammo for all of them. I closed my eyes, covered my ears, and for a moment felt bad that the last thing Ralphie Jr. was going to see was his mom shaking like a fucking bowl of jello. 2 more shots made me open my eyes. Ted was sliding down the cliff in a cloud of dust. The huge, freakish, 2-legged coyote was down, and the pack was scattering.
"It's not gonna stay put for long,"
Ted snapped.
"Grab some rocks. Anything to weigh it down.
I didn't want to get any closer to the dark, pointy-eared body, but I did as I was told. I felt like a cave woman creeping up to the thing with a rock in my hand. Is it? My voice trembled. Is it a skinwalker?
Seriously, lady?
Ted groaned.
I swear, you people see one weird thing in the desert, and suddenly it's all skinwalker this and wendigo that. It's real disrespectful, especially when what you're looking at is a possessed guy in a fursuit. Up close, the fur did look pretty artificial, and the name tag, Buttercup, did a lot for Ted's case as well. Given that Las Vegas is only 80 miles away, you shouldn't even need to ask where the poor fellow came from. Although, I do wonder how he got a demon inside of him. Hurry up with those rocks, Ted rumbled behind me. It's not done yet. Sure enough, the thing started to writhe on the ground, even with 2 holes in its chest. And as it yipped and yiffed in that strange language, the coyotes stopped their retreat. One snapped at Ralphie Jr., who swatted it with a stick. Another sprung at Ted. He sprawled, the shotgun went flying, and a pointy-eared black shadow rose to block out the last pale light of the sunset. I grabbed the shotgun, and this time I paid close attention to the recoil. The black-furred thing went down again, and soon all 3 of us were heaping everything we could onto it to hold it down. Ted disappeared up to the cave, and when he came back, there was a red gas canister in his hand. As he soaked and burned the possessed thing beneath the rocks, the coyotes howled. That gas can, I muttered. You knew how to kill that thing. You knew about the cave. You knew you'd need some people for bait. Ted turned to me, backlit by our flaming, furry barbecue. You picked us up on purpose. None of this was a coincidence. Nope, Ted admitted. Sure wasn't. Maybe it was just the firelight, but it sure looked to me like there was something wrong with Ted's shadow. The forearms were too long, the back too bent, the face stretching forward like a muzzle. And I'm willing to bet that your name's not even Ted Yellowhorse. Maybe even that if we opened up the trailer of that truck, we'd find the real Ted Yellowhorse, lying dead on top of some cartons of baby formula or something. I re-racked the shotgun. I didn't know if it had any shells left, but it sure sounded cool. I heard a snapping sound. Ted's hands were contorting into paws. His arms lengthened sickeningly towards the sandstone. The coyotes fell in line behind him. The salted earth was ours long before you people ever climbed down from the trees. That one thought it could take over our territory. His face extended and his canines twisted into a hideous smile. But we're a lot older. And a lot smarter. That one was drawing too much attention. I took a step backwards and shrieked as I felt warm fur against my leg. We were surrounded. Here's what you're gonna do for me, lady. You're gonna fire that shotgun into each of the cars down there. Then you're gonna wipe off your prints and put it in the hands of Ted Yellowhorse, who is indeed in the back of the trailer. You're gonna tell the police the story of a kidnapping and a psychotic truck driver. Take your time with the story. Make it really good. Because if it isn't, if you give them any reason to disturb our hunting grounds again... All of the coyotes howled at once. I got the message. Ralphie Jr. and I are going to crash at a motel while I give my statement to the cops and wait for the SUV to get fixed. After that, we're back on the road. Our destination? Any place where there's no sand. Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. If you'd like another way to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/Jordan Group Horror. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward, and if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you, which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow. And see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night.